Hi, everyone. Good evening. I welcome you tonight to a really important evening for you as you begin the process of the college journey. A year from now, when you think of it, as we hit January of 2021, your children will be preparing for their final months of high school, and they will be pretty much knowing, pretty close to really where they are being accepted and very potentially where they're actually going to go. So it is an important year ahead, and it'll be a really quick one at that. So our guidance department has put together, I think, a really robust program that will take you over 3 nights. And tonight is night 1, and the whole concept is really where to begin. And I think you'll find that over the next couple of sessions, as tonight will be an incredibly informative evening, and then of course with your final one that will happen over the next many weeks, and then your final workshop that will happen at the beginning of senior year, I hope and I think you will find that the information in the materials and the scaffolding of what our guidance department is doing with all of you, I think you'll find very, very useful. So I welcome you here tonight, and enjoy your evening. I'm going to introduce to you the member of the guidance department who has been really instrumental in putting this entire program together, Mr. Steve Goldman.
Hi, welcome. I'm glad you could come out tonight. So we do have a little bit of a change to our program. Unfortunately, we had, as part of our panel, we had a parent that has just gone through the process who had a family emergency, so she could not make it tonight. And I just got a message from the rep from Stonehill College, Heather Mello, who was going to be here, but she is ill. She tried to rally, but she just couldn't get her head up off the pillow, she said. So we're going to make it work. We still have our student that has just gone through the process, and we have the admissions counselor from Shannon from Bridgewater State. So they will be up here in a little bit, and we will give you all kinds of information about how best to start this process and prepare yourself over the course of the next year. As Mr. Brannigan said, this is the first of a 3-part series. The next one will be in late April. That's called What You Should Be Doing Over the Summer. And then in September, we will have part 3, which is the nuts and bolts of applying to college. These sessions are sequential. There's very little repetition or repetitive information in these workbooks. There's timelines in the inside cover of each one to help keep you on track. They're not concrete, but if you can try to follow them the best you can, you will breeze through this process. This is not something you want to wait until September to start. It's not a hard process, it's just a very detailed process, and it's an expensive decision that you're making, and it's a life decision you're making, and we just want to make sure that you're putting all the thought and time into it that it deserves, so you end up at the right place and put yourself in a good position for the future. So we're going to start off the evening by reviewing the materials, make sure you got everything. First off, out in the lobby, there were registration cards for Naviance. Naviance is our software program for career and college planning. Your students have been on it since freshman year, doing a variety of different activities. At least they were supposed to. Sometimes they don't all do it. But there was all kinds of career planning things that we started with them freshman and sophomore year. If they did not do it during advisory when the teachers were facilitating those activities, they can still fill out some of those surveys and answer some of the questions to help kind of prepare them for the college search. The registration cards are for you to open up your own account on Naviance so you can help your student through the process. This is something they should be doing. But sometimes they might need a little bit of a nudge or a check-in, so it's always important to make sure that the parents are engaged and know what's going on with the process. So when you came into the auditorium, there were several handouts. The big one was the workbook, College Planning for Juniors and Their Families, Where to Begin. And like I said, you'll get 2 more, so please save these. These will be posted on our website, the guidance website, under junior information as we do these. The next thing that you get was this yellow piece of paper right here, which is tonight's agenda. Then there was a pink handout talking a little bit about the differences between the SATs and the ACTs. Both are college entrance exams that we'll talk about in a little bit. The blue handout is the college admission selector, and it gives you an idea of what schools are in what categories, from most competitive down to non-competitive schools. On the gold paper is a program evaluation form, and we ask at the end of the workshop if you could please take a few minutes just to fill out the form, and if you'd like to make comments, you certainly could. This program has evolved over the course of, probably close to 20 years now, based on the feedback that we get from the parents and the students at these workshops. If we're not satisfying something that you need to know, we need to make sure we're incorporating that in the next time we do these workshops. So please take a minute to do that. And that is it for the handouts. So if you didn't get anything, we'll leave that stuff out. You can get it on the way out. So let's start off with the workbook. On the inside cover, we have a timeline. So here we are in January, and you are at College Planning Night. Congratulations. You can cross that one off. So in February, we are going to post the updated GPAs and class ranks. The teachers just finished grading all the final exams. Report cards are coming out, I believe, on Monday. It'll take us a couple of weeks to make sure that everything is verified, and that if there was anybody that was out during exams, they've made up their exams. So we will send a notification out, so you will have updated grade point averages and class ranks. They will be posted in Naviance. This way, when you start your search, you actually have some most recent numbers. Okay. So other things that are in here are just reminders about deadlines for registering for different tests, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You'll see in April there's a national college fair in Boston that April 30th, and then on May 1st where is the second day, and we will have a field trip that day so students can sign up and go on that. So that is the timeline. So we move ahead in the book. So page 2, a word from guidance. All this is just tells you what we are responsible for as a guidance department and what the student is responsible for. It's not our jobs to do your search. It's not our jobs to pick your schools. We are here to advise. We are here to meet with you and help you through the process, and we will do that as many times as it'll take to make sure that, and then we answer all your questions, make sure you're moving forward in the process. But if you don't do it, it's just not going to get done. So it's important that you take the initiative for this. If you can't do it now, we wonder how you're going to be able to survive in college, because there's no one that's going to push you in college to tell you to do your work or show up to class. So it's important that you ask questions when you're stuck, and we'll be more than happy to help you throughout the process. Okay, so where to begin? In this workshop, we're going to cover Naviance and how to do a college appraisal and matching yourself to the schools. And then here, by mid-April, we have some suggestions of things you should be doing. One of the big suggestions is April vacation is a great time to visit colleges. You will not miss any time from school, and you will see the colleges with students still in session. You can go over the summer. Sometimes that's the reality. If you're looking at schools that are very far away, you might have to do a trip over the summer. But you're not going to get the same flavor of the school when you go in the summertime. It's very different. There's not a lot of students around. You'll see what the school looks like, but it's really the students that make up the atmosphere and the excitement of the school. So April vacation, the weather's starting to get a little bit nicer out. So it's a great opportunity for you to be able to kind of see the schools, talk to students while you're on campus. That's important. Admissions counselors are there to sell their school. Okay, they'll answer any question you have, but if you don't ask a question, they're not going to tell you if there's a downside or a negative to a school. They're not going to tell you if they don't have a gym that's open to the students, if you like going to the gym. But the students will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you know exactly what you're signing up for. Okay, so April vacation. And then just pay attention to some of these details here. How many of you know that we have a Twitter page from Guidance? Okay, well, we have a Twitter page. It's at Sachem Guidance. Okay, and we put stuff out all the time. How many of you have been getting emails from us through Naviance? Okay, you're all getting them. I'm not sure you're all reading them, but you're all getting them. So we're sending out a lot of important information, especially for juniors and seniors. A lot of scholarship information this time of year for the seniors. So it's important that you keep track of that stuff and so you don't miss any important deadlines. So let's talk a little bit about the testing. There's two types of college entrance exams, the ACTs and the SATs. The ACTs are not as well known on the East Coast as the SATs. They're based out in Iowa, and they were primarily a Midwest to West test for many, many years, where the SATs focused more on the east of the Mississippi. 99% of the colleges will accept either one of those tests. They're set up a little bit differently. The ACT is based on English, math, science, and reading. So it's more subject-based, where the SATs are reading and writing, and then there's a math section. We would recommend that all of you take the SAT to start with. More testing is not necessarily better. We should take the SATs twice. We recommend the first one in May of your junior year. And then the second one you could take in August, October, or November, depending on when your first college deadline is. So if you're not happy with those SAT scores after the second time, then you might want to try an ACT. Okay? The ACTs can also be used as subject tests. Some schools require SAT subject tests. They tend to be the higher competitive schools, the most competitive schools. They also, and sometimes if you're going to a specialized program like nursing, they may want a biology subject test. Sometimes some of these schools will accept the ACT in lieu of a subject test because they're more subject-based. So you can see there the test dates, the registration deadlines. We are not a test center for ACT. I believe Bridgewater State is a test center for ACT, and there's some private schools in the area that are also. You can go right to actstudent.org or .com, and you can find out where the closest test center is. So the SATs. And you can see here in red, that's the one we're recommending all juniors take. Okay, March is a little early to take an SAT, and we're a test center in May also. But March is a little bit early. You want to get as much English and as much math under your belt as you possibly can before you take that first SAT. So May is a good one because you'll take it, you'll get the scores back in about 2 to 3 weeks before school gets out. If you have questions, you can come to Guidance and you can talk to us about it. The June one, if you can't make the May one, if you have an athletic event or you're going to be out of town or something like that, you could take a June one. We're not a test center, so you'd have to take it at a different school. But most likely you're going to get those test scores back after school gets out. So if you wanted to talk with us about it, we're not going to be here to do that. So we encourage you to try to do that May one if you possibly can. And you can see the costs in there, and there's a late fee in there too if you miss the deadline. You don't want to have to pay that. The SAT subject test I spoke about a little bit. You cannot take excuse me. You cannot take subject tests the same day that you take the reasoning test. You can take up to 3 subject tests in one sitting, but it would have to be a separate date from the SAT reasoning test. As I said earlier, more is not better when it comes to testing, and there's a lot of schools that have gone test optional too. The tests take a lot of time. You have to be there at 7:30 in the morning, and you may not get out until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a pretty intense time. If you have to do it, you have to do it, but don't put yourself through it and take every test out there just for the sake of doing it. There's probably about 75 colleges in the United States that require subject tests, and there's probably about another 75 that require subject tests. So my suggestion would be, if it's not required, I probably would not go anywhere near them. If you're not sure, just set up some time with your guidance counselor, and they'll be more than happy to advise you on that. So to access the guidance website, you go to middleborough.k12.ma.us/MHS, and then you click right there on About Us, and you click on Guidance, and then once you get on the guidance page, on the left-hand column, you are going to see, you can scroll down and you will see Naviance, and that's how you will log on to Naviance. This screen here will pop up. For the students that have already registered, you're going to go right into, put your email address in and the password that you created. We do not have your passwords. So we asked all the students when we had them register as freshmen to write down their password or put it in their phone. So that's a starting point if you cannot remember what your password is. If not, you need to click I forgot my password, and they will email you a new temporary password. You have to go through that process to get back on. For the parents, when you register, you need to go to the right-hand side and click I need to register. Put in the temporary password on the card you got outside today, out in the lobby, and then it'll ask you to create your own password. And then when you go in the next time, you go back over here, use your email address and your new password, and those cards will no longer be any good. So, all the seniors are going to have to fill out several different documents. We suggest you start with your activity sheet and start recording all the things that you've been doing since you were in high school. It looks like this. I will show you when we log on to Naviance in a few minutes how to access it. But it just lists things from athletics, music and drama, school publications, student government, honors, outside clubs and programs, any community service you might have done, and all of you should have been doing community service because it is now a graduation requirement, 24 hours. And got cut off on this page. There's also work experience also. Okay. On the next page, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can tell you the students always shortchange themselves when it comes to what they've been involved with. On the next page, we have listed several things that are in-school activities and some suggestions for out-of-school activities to include when you're completing your activity sheet. Even if you just did something freshman year, let's say you played soccer freshman year and you didn't play again, put that down. It's important to record all that information. This document is also going to be used when you apply for scholarships your senior year, so it's not just for your guidance counselor. It's also going to be part of your scholarship application also. So it's important that you give yourself credit. Now, you don't want to list, I did the Walk for Hunger once when I was in middle school. They don't care about that. But if you've done Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts since you were very young, or piano or horseback riding, those are things that, or dance, those are all things that are a long-term commitment that you certainly want to include on that activity sheet. But primarily it's 9 through 12 activities. Make sure you also, because you'll save this and you'll update it again next year, but you also want to include what you're doing your senior year. A lot of times we get these sheets and I see that the students played a sport, have been in a club for 9, 10, and 11. I'm like, why did you stop? Like, well, it's a spring sport, I haven't done it yet. Put it down if you know you're going to do it again, okay? Because we put a lot of that information into letters of recommendation, so we don't want to make it look like you did it for 3 years and then you just kind of quit your senior year. So it's important that you give yourself the credit for what you've done. How many babysitters do we have out here? Okay. Make sure you put that down as work experience. A lot of times when I'm meeting with students, I said, do you have work? No. Babysit? Yeah, well, I babysit. It's a job with a lot of responsibility, okay? So make sure you're giving yourself credit for that too, okay? Anything that you do inside or outside of school over the course of the 4 years is something that you want to make sure, especially if it was significant or meaningful, you want to make sure you're listing it on there. Okay, so on Naviance, we had you do some self-appraisal exercises freshman and sophomore year. There was a career interest profiler, there was the do what you are, there were several different things that we asked you to complete, and it gave you suggestions for different career ideas and jobs, and gave you information about the money and the work setting and all that fun stuff. That's the best starting point for you, is to make sure you kind of have a sense of what you might want to do. How many undecided majors do we have right now out there? It's okay. It's the most popular major. You don't have to declare your major until the end of your sophomore year in college. But it'd be nice to have a handful of ideas, so when you're searching for colleges, you find a college that's going to give you several options that you might be interested in. You don't want to end up at a school that specializes in business and then find out later on that you want to go into nursing. So these are the instructions to access the About Me and the assessments, and I will show you how to do that in a minute. This is how you access your grade point average. And these are all step-by-step. You can't miss if you follow these step-by-step instructions. And then the matching self to school. Some websites to look at. Word to the wise, organize. That's the important piece. To be as organized as you possibly can be. Start folders. As you eliminate schools from the process, get them out of there so you're not getting them mixed up with everything else. Make sure you're keeping track of who you're communicating with at colleges. If you have a conversation or you do a visit, you make sure that you are following up with a thank you. Do it in writing, because that stuff all goes into your file. And if you are on the cusp of getting into that school and there's a few spots left and several people that are competitive, that might be the thing that puts you over the top. So make sure that you are doing all those little things. The colleges also check to see how many times you click on their website. So that will help also if you are looking stuff up. They know when you're doing that. They know what your level of interest is for the schools. And then I'm going to walk you through the college search in a minute, but again, these are step-by-step instructions to do a college search on Naviance. How many of you have done this already? Good, very good. And tips for visiting colleges. So this is important. It's important to speak to the students and get the information from them. As I said, the admissions people are going to tell you what the good things are that's going on. As we get into this time of year with March Madness and the basketball tournament, that's a big selling point for colleges, the school spirit and all that. But you really want to talk to students, and you really want to find out is what you're seeing on TV, what it's like when you're on campus there. So don't be afraid to talk to students and ask them how they like it there. What do they like, what don't they like? And we give you some suggestions. Right here, speak to other students. There you go. Questions to ask about admissions, the classroom, how big are the classes, what's the average class size, housing, what type of housing is available. Right now, you guys go home. You have a bed, you got a roof, you got a meal. You don't have to worry about any of those things, okay? So it's important to start thinking about those things, because it's not just going to happen. You got to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into and comparing school to school. Ask, if you have a car, can I bring my car on campus? A lot of times freshmen can't bring cars on campus. If you have a part-time job you need to get to, that might be problematic. So it's important that you really kind of look at the things differently than you do when you go home. When you go home, you know those things are there. Getting on emailing lists and mailing lists is important to make sure you find out what's going on. I just had a question. How many students know who this is? How many parents know who this is? That's what I figured. And then mark your calendars. The National College Fair is coming up April 30th and March 1st. As I said earlier, that you'll hear announcements for a field trip. Space is limited, so it's first come, first serve. Who signs up and gets the permission slips in. Part 2 for college planning. What you should be doing over the summer is Wednesday, April 29th at 6:30 right here in the auditorium. Our college application boot camp, highly, highly recommended. You ask any senior that's gone to boot camp if it was worth the time and the money, and they will tell you, yes, it was. They had their essay completed, proofread by an English teacher over and over again, and they had about 90% of their common application completed also. So that is well worth the time spent. Part 3 for college planning, the nuts and bolts of applying to college will be in September. We don't have a date for that yet, but it'll probably be the 3rd or 4th week of September. We'll have a financial aid night in October, and then the scholarship information night is usually the week before February vacations when that information is released. In the back of the book is a sample activity sheet, so you can see how to word things. And then we have a glossary of terms in the back of the book, because you're going to hear a lot of words and acronyms that might be new to you. So it's probably going to be back there, and then you can make any notes that you need. So that is the workbook. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a college search. So let's start here. So this is when you log on to Naviance, this is what you see. If you scroll down, before we do the college search, where it says Document Resources, it didn't time me out, come on. Let's do this again. There we go. So right now, we're just going to worry about the activity sheet. So that's how you access it. It's a Word document. You can type right on it. You can save it in Naviance. There's directions to save it in Naviance in the journal section. Save it on your computer also. And please, whatever you do, do not put this into a Google Doc. It will change the formatting, okay? And it says in big bold letters in the book, do not put this into Google, okay? Any of these documents should never go into Google. So that's how you access the activity sheet. So let's now go over to the college search. Sorry, that's my presentation on Tuesday night right there. So to do a college search, we're going to click on colleges. We're going to go to colleges I'm thinking about. And then we're going to click on advanced college search. We're going to click on four-year college. Now, there's almost 14,000 schools in this program around the world. If we get too specific, we will come up with 0 schools. So I'm going to show you what is the most important stuff to put in. So let's look for a four-year school. Let's say co-ed. Public or private, I would leave it no preference. Campus surroundings, large city, large town, small town, rural. This tends to be a little bit confusing. A school like UMass Amherst is in a rural community, but UMass has over 20,000 students, so it's a city unto itself. What I usually tell people is if you don't see yourself as a Boston or a New York kind of person, then click everything but large city. If you have no preference, you can click them all. So today we're just going to do small city, large town, small town, and rural. And we're going to go next. Distance from home. You can do it by so many miles from your area code. Zip code, or you can click individual states or entire regions. So let's do Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. And you can save these searches. So if you wanted to do a local search, and then if you were interested in schools in Virginia, you could just do a Virginia search. And then we're going to click Next. Okay, size of the school. This is very misleading also. Just because a school has a big name or a big athletic program does not mean it's a large school. So for example, the University of Miami only has about 6,500 students on campus. Bridgewater State has almost 12,000 students. It's almost the same size as Boston College. There's only a few more students at BC than are at Bridgewater State. So, the big difference between some of these schools is what division athletic program they are, and if you see them on TV or not. So it can be very misleading. The average size school is about 5,000 students. So what we're going to do, let's say we're not looking at a school like UMass, which has over 20,000. We're going to do everything else. I would skip percent of students with minority background, unless that's very important to you, percent of students from out of state, and percent male and female. And then move to the next one. Percent accepted, there's a way to look at that later on, and this, as you can see here, it doesn't reflect local data, so I would skip that for now. If you want to play a sport, and it's very, very important to you, you can click a sport, but you got to be very careful. If you want to play football, and you click football, and the school does not have a football program like Merrimack College or Boston University, those schools will never show up on your list. So unless it's an absolute must that you play at the NCAA level, I would leave that blank. Majors. Let's pick a couple of majors. So how about we go with business? And we're going to go accounting and business, business administration, okay, and then let's do another one. Let's pick psychology. Go applied psychology. General and other. Okay. And then we're going to move on. Cost. For now, I would not let cost be a factor in the search process. Cost certainly will be a factor when you have to make a decision at the end. But let's not limit ourselves in our choices right now. Let's wait and see how the financial aid process plays out. Who knows? You might end up getting into a school and be able to go to a school that costs $70,000 for what it would cost to go to a local school of $25,000. You never know with the financial aid process. So it's too early to, in the process to limit yourself with cost. And then special programs like ROTC, things like that. So if that's not a real important thing, then I would skip that. And then we're going to click View Matches. So those almost 14,000 schools are now down to 60. So we have 60 schools. Here's your criteria right here of what we plugged in. And then here's a list of all the schools in alphabetical order. So what we do is we go up here and we're going to click Save Search. And we're going to plug in today's date. And we're going to type in business and psychology. And we're going to put in Mass, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire, so we know what it is. Oops, that's not New Hampshire. And we save it. And you can see here in the Dropbox that we've saved a whole bunch of searches in here. So you can keep going in and doing different searches. Now we're going to go down and we're going to click on a few schools. So let's click on Bridgewater. And let's click on Stonehill. And we'll click on UMass Dartmouth. And we are going to add them to colleges I'm thinking about. So now Bridgewater didn't show up. I wonder why. Okay, so now it's under colleges I'm thinking about. So now I'm going to click on the school. So I'm going to click on Stonehill. Now, this is not their website. This is still Naviance. So this just gives you a brief overview of Stonehill College. Cost, graduation rate, the acceptance rate. There's 110 colleges in Naviance that overlap with programs and similar types of schools. So it could be, they're probably Catholic schools because Stonehill's a Catholic school. Over on the right-hand side here, you can see all the different types of deadlines. They have early decision, regular decision, early action, so on and so forth. And then this just tells you a little bit about the school. It's a private four-year school, almost 2,500 students there. The student-to-faculty ratio is 12:1, Roman Catholic, suburban, large city, so on and so forth. So that gives you lots of information there. Studies, what do they offer for majors? And they're all there. And if you click on the major, what will end up happening is it'll link you to all the colleges in Naviance that offer that same major. Then we go over to student life. It tells you it's a small school near Boston, 15 miles from Middleborough. 90% of the people that go there live on campus. Gives you a little bit of breakdown of the type of students that are there. Housing information, so on and so forth. Then we go to the next one, which is my favorite. It's the admissions button. And when you scroll down, you can see the last few years of history of our students from Middleborough that applied. So last year we had 10 students. In 2018 we had 20 students. In 2017 we had 5 students that applied there. And then this is what I like right here. This graph has plotted all those students that we just looked at above based on acceptance, rejections, and wait list. And that dotted line is the average of all those students, their GPAs and their SAT scores. So if there's a green check mark, that is an acceptance. If there's a red X, that's a rejection. If there's a blue dot, that's a wait list. That circle with the little person in there, in the middle, is this student right here based on their most recent GPA and either PSAT or SAT scores, whatever the most recent scores are that we got. So when you look at this now, you can say, is this a realistic school? Is this a stretch school? Or is this a safety school? Anybody want to take a guess? Just shout it out. No one? Well, if our Stonehill rep was here, she would tell you that it's realistic, okay? Granted, a lot of those check marks are above, but they are still in the range, okay? Usually when you look at these graphs, as we get more, we've only been using Naviance for 3 years, so as we get more data in, it's going to look like a weather map, really. You're going to see all the red rejections down at the bottom, all the blue dots in the middle, which will be the wait list, and then all the green checks up top. So as we get more data, it'll be more clear. But this is a realistic school. It's not 100% sure, but it is realistic for this student to apply. The thing you have to be careful about when you look at this, you see the red X right up over here, and that wait list, and it's surrounded by a couple of green acceptances. That might have been a special program, okay? So sometimes it's harder to get into programs. So for example, to get into UMass Amherst, you need probably about a 3.4, 3.5 now. But if you want to get into the business school or the nursing program at UMass, your GPA is going to have to be a lot higher than that, and your SAT score is going to have to be a lot higher. UMass's business program is one of the top programs in the country, and they only take about 90 students a year into their nursing program. It's a very small program. So that's why sometimes there's unusual stuff that you see. You see a wait list way down over here, on the left-hand side, right there. Not sure why that is there. I can't guess. It could have been the student didn't complete their application. They didn't reject them, but they didn't accept them either. But this helps kind of give you an idea of how you fit into these different schools. It's an expensive proposition. Application fees can be anywhere from $10 to $100. I would say on average, they're probably about $75, $80 per application. So you want to make sure when you're applying to these schools that you're not just throwing money out, that you have an opportunity to get into these places. And it doesn't hurt to call the admissions office and ask an admissions counselor, here's my SAT scores, here's my GPA, is it unreal for me to apply to this school or not? And they will be honest with you. You have a chance, you probably don't have a chance. They'll be honest with you and they will tell you, if it's worth your while to do that. Okay. And then the last piece is the cost, the average cost, tuition and fees, housing, all that other stuff, the types of financial aid that they give out and that type of stuff. So that's how you do a search. I know this is kind of a long, drawn-out piece, but we really feel it's important that you know how to use this. Naviance is probably the best tool that we have for our students, from A to Z, from career planning to college planning. We just wanted to make sure that you guys had an understanding of how to kind of walk through this process. Certainly, if there's any questions, you can let us know. But that's the college search piece. Now I'm going to ask what's left of my panel to come up here on stage, and we will start the second half of the program. You guys can move closer together if you want. Okay, so to your left, we have Shannon Fernando Cole, who is an admissions counselor at Bridgewater State. Shannon is returning now for her third year with us. And she's been wonderful in advising our students on not just Bridgewater, but just how to go through this process from the admissions perspective. And to her left, we have Tori Warner, who is a current senior here at Middleborough High School. And Tori has just completed the process, is anxiously awaiting her decisions. You haven't heard anything yet, have you? No. I didn't think so. We are going to start by talking about matching yourself to school from their different perspectives. I will throw it to Shannon to start us off.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So obviously there's a lot of schools out there, so matching yourself to a school is very much kind of a detailed process in that you want to look at the different factors, public versus private, larger schools, smaller schools, class size, are all things to take into consideration. Majors, extracurriculars too, because obviously you're going to be in class, yes, but those are only going to be a couple hours a day. So what the school has to offer you for programs and resources after the fact is also something important to consider. Distance, how far are you looking to get away from home? Do you want to live on campus or commute? Cost is also very important to look at, as well as financial aid, what those packages are going to look like and what they can offer you. I always think it's a good idea to talk to students about the social aspect, what the school is like after school hours, what they're involved in, and what if students are there on the weekends and what the programming looks like and things like that. Those are all important things for you to look at, and to have those conversations with admission staff and students, because the students are living that, so they're going to know best how to kind of advise you and talk to you about those sorts of things. And again, majors, you don't have to be necessarily set in what major you're looking at, but if you have some ideas, admissions and students can talk about what we offer and what kinds of programs and whether or not it's a good fit for you too. So definitely a lot of important things to look at, and that will kind of help you narrow down your search a little bit, because again, there's so many schools out there. When you kind of break down those things that you are looking for in your school, it's kind of narrow that pool down for you a little bit.
So, Tori, what are some of the things that you did when you first started the process?
So for me, the first thing I did was that college search on Naviance. I had no idea what I was looking for in a college at all. Like, I didn't know much about it. My sister had just started her first year at college, and we're different. Like, I didn't know exactly what to look for because I wasn't like her. We weren't looking for the same stuff. So that search was the first thing that really gave me some names and colleges to look at. It helped me just see what was out there a little bit and get a little bit of a taste of a few sorts of different options that I had and start diving into the process and learning more about each and every college. Another really important resource that I felt like I had was the upperclassmen that I met. So obviously the best part of high school, I think, is your ability to intertwine with the other grades and get to know some people below you and above you. And I like to use the upperclassmen that I had met in high school as a resource. So I have some colleges that I'm looking at that students from here are now attending, and it's so awesome to be able to talk to them about their experiences there and get some more details from them, from their perspective. They're going to be honest with you. They want you to be somewhere that you're comfortable and happy. So I'm definitely using that. And as you guys are juniors, you have the seniors that are just went through the process, and we know now what we're looking for and we didn't know before, and we are exactly in the shoes that you guys were in. So we're a great resource if you're looking to see what works best for us, might work best for you, to just talk things out and let you get a feel for what you're looking for, because you're not expected to know everything right now, and we want to help you kind of figure it out along the way. So I say definitely using the people above you and the amazing stuff you have like Naviance to kind of help you set the stage and get you on a path to the right place.
Thank you. So I worked on two college campuses. I worked at the University of New Hampshire for a year, and I worked at Bridgewater State for 6 years. And as part of my job, I actually had an apartment on campus, so I really got a sense, in addition to my own undergraduate experience, of campus life, not just during the day, but after 5 o'clock when all the professors and professionals go home. It might sound a little silly, but the social life is a very important piece of this decision-making process. Certainly you're there for your education. There's no question about that. But you are going to spend more time outside of the classroom, whether you're living on campus or commuting, than you will be in the classroom. And if you're not happy in your surroundings, that has an impact on your grades. It has an impact on your whether or not you want to stay at that school. It has a financial impact on you. It's really important to make sure that the setting you are putting yourself into has opportunity for you when you're not in the classroom. You want to make sure that whatever your hobbies and activities are, if you're a person that likes to go to a big city, then UNH probably wouldn't be the right place for you, because there's nothing around but cows up there. The big city is Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is about the size of Faneuil Hall. I like my experience up there, but I needed to be closer to the city. Not that I lived in the city, but I needed to be closer to things that were there, the cultural, the sports, the airports, all that stuff. I didn't want to have to drive 2 hours to get to all that stuff. So it's important that that you are matching not just the academics, but the surroundings also. Let's talk a little bit about the interview and the visit.
So obviously, as Tori was saying, that you may not know exactly what you're looking for. So having Naviance as an idea of list of schools, to go and visit those schools is really going to be what sets it apart, because you're going to see size, both spatially, the layout of the campus, as well as, is a class going to look like this auditorium, or is it going to be like a traditional classroom setting like you have now in the high school? So definitely I always encourage students to visit as many schools as possible, because on paper, when you're doing these searches, the schools are going to look pretty much the same in terms of what they might offer. for, extracurriculars and things like that. But when you walk onto a campus and you visit that school, that's when you're going to get a better idea of whether or not you can picture yourself there. And I think that's important. A lot of what I tell students is typically it's a feeling more than it is, what they offer. It's a feeling. You walk on that campus and you feel home, or you feel like I can totally picture myself being here for the next 4 years. So I definitely, like I said, visit as many schools as possible, utilize weekends for schools that offer weekend visits as well as those vacations. If you have excused absences, to visit schools as well, and go and visit those schools. Bridgewater is offering, we're doing the regional college fair in May, and that's a good opportunity not only to see Bridgewater, but to chat with other schools. If for some reason maybe you're not able to go to Boston to the national fair, or just to follow up with some other schools too. So you kind of be knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone, so just to plug that in there. But also, again, that's when you're going to get to meet a lot of different students and talk about their experience as well. Going to the visit, some schools might offer interviews, so if they're offering you an interview, keep in mind professional attire. You might not want to show up in yoga pants or sweatpants. You want to try and put that best foot forward for that interview, because sometimes schools utilize that when it comes down to a decision. They might utilize that interview and their impression and the things that you guys chatted about in considering you, especially if it's a more competitive school or a more competitive program. Bridgewater, we don't offer interviews, but we do always have admissions staff there to chat with students and families if there are any questions that come up. So the students can talk a lot about the university and what it offers and the social aspect. And if you have questions specifically about admissions requirements or the process, we always have admissions staff available for that as well. Ask all your questions on these visits too. There's truly no silly question, and having worked with the tour guide staff, they love when the group is interactive. It makes the tour go by faster for them. They love their job, so they love talking about the school, and I think that goes university to university. Those students are there because they want to show how much they love the school. So definitely ask all of your questions, and don't be afraid to kind of ask what they like and what they dislike and things like that, and really just get some more information for yourself.
Tori, did you visit schools?
Yes, I did. Shannon really covered a lot there, but I think that just like she said, you're going to hear a lot of things from your friends and from other people about college tours they've went on and things that they've experienced there, what they thought, what they felt, but nothing is going to tell you what it feels like until you're there yourself. So a school that your friend might have absolutely loved, you might step foot on and be like, this is not it for me. And that is the most important tool that you can use to make sure that you're going to have a good time wherever you go. And
Didn't touch it, I swear.
So it's important to talk to your friends and hear different options that they've checked out. But until you tour it yourself, you're not going to know at all if that's what you're interested in. And another part of tours is that as you go along, there's so many things and details that you're going to learn that you won't be able to find on the website or that you won't be able to learn anywhere else. So it's a cool way to learn some new stuff. You can write it down. You can start making a list of different things that they had that you liked or didn't like. And it kind of just helps you narrow down the process a little bit more. And it's just an overall great idea. Nothing is going to tell you what that college is like more than anything than a tour. So it's definitely the best option and will help you figure things out a little bit more if you're still a little confused on what you want, and will help you fall in love with the schools that you really think you belong to. So.
Thank you. So look at the screen for a minute. This is Stonehill College right here. Look at these pictures. Sunny days, blue skies, everyone's smiling. Let's go over to UMass Dartmouth. Now, I don't know about this, but I don't think UMass is on the beach. Okay? It's probably Horseneck Beach would be my guess. But these pictures all look similar, don't they? There's a lot of them from UMass. So you really, is that what it really looks like? Maybe some days it does, but is that the typical day there? That's why it's really important. I can tell you, you're going to go on your very first, has anybody here gone on a visit yet? Okay, what'd you think about your first visit? You liked it? It was RPI? Okay. Okay. So what's going to probably happen, you go on that very first visit. Troy, tell me if this happened with you. You go on that very first visit, and you're like, I love it. This is where I'm going to go. Then you go on the second visit, you're like, oh, wait, this is even better. And then in the third one, you're like, what was I thinking about with that first school? It's new, it's exciting, it's different. But that's where you need to really get out and compare and contrast, because you will notice differences. Colleges, like people, have personalities. Several years ago, I went on a counselor tour of all the Springfield area colleges, and each one of them was very different. I won't mention names, but there was one school in particular that I'm like, I am totally here. This is where I could be. And this is a guidance counselor tour now, not a student tour. And there was another one I went on, I'm like, where are the students? Like I was on campus for like 3 hours and I never saw a single student. So I asked them on the tour, I said, where are the students? Oh, they're all in class. I'm like, for 3 straight hours? They're all in the same schedule? And then I saw somebody walking with their head down very fast from one building to the other. And I'm like, no, this isn't a campus I'd want to be on. It doesn't seem real friendly. And you know what, for some people, maybe that's their thing. They're going to college, they don't want the extras, they don't want the social, they're there for their education, they don't want to be bothered with anything else. Personality-wise, that's not a fit for me. I would need something where there was more interaction. So it's really important that you look beyond these pictures and make sure that, what you're looking at here is what it actually is like when you're on the campus.
A good test, too, is if it's a really rainy or cold day and you still love the school. I think that says a lot.
Yes.
I've had students and families that come and they're just totally like soaked. They're miserable when they walk in, and then they're leaving and they're like, this was great. We love it. And then they come back on a nice day and they're like, we love it even more now. So that's always a good test, too. If you like it in the cold weather and in the rain, you probably will like it when it's beautiful summer and fall weather as well.
And Bridgewater is a beautiful campus, I will say.
It is.
Stonehill is also. Okay, so let's move on to the application and the essay. And just before you guys start, I just wanted to make a comment about the application and the essay. In some cases, is the only opportunity you have to show them who you are. Okay? Because as Shannon mentioned earlier, a lot of schools don't do interviews. So if you can't get in there and dazzle them with your personality, it's going to have to be the application and the essay. Okay? And the essay is not just a writing sample. It's an opportunity to say, hey, in addition to all these questions I answered on the application, this is who I am. This is what you're getting. This is how I think. This is what I believe in. This is why you want me on your campus. Not many schools have paper applications anymore. Most of them are electronic now. But if you are applying to a school that has a paper application, please, whatever you do, do not throw it in your book bag with all your other stuff. Let it get all wrinkled up, curled corners, rips, coffee stains, and then send it in. That's not a good look, okay? That is really not a good look. My suggestion is get 2 copies. Put the original in a nice, safe place at home, throw the other one in your book bag, and work on it as a rough draft, okay? So you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself as perfectly as possible. One other note. You need to complete your application like it is an English paper. It is not a text message. Capitalization, punctuation, very, very important. Can't tell you how many times I'm reviewing applications with students, and not all students ask me to review them. But when I'm reviewing them and I see questions that weren't answered, I said, how come you didn't answer this question? I didn't think it was important. Shannon, if it's on the application, is it important? Okay. So just make sure that you are presenting yourself in the best possible way, and I will let our panel take it from here.
Yeah, so definitely agree with that, especially too in regards to if you have questions about the application. I get a lot of students that will just email me from an email that doesn't have their name, their first or last name in it, and they'll say, what's the status of my application? And I have to say, well, what's your name and date of birth? Some context is helpful. So if you guys, the admissions staff is there to serve you. As long as you provide them with the information, admissions is going to be more than happy to assist you with that process. So just remember to conduct, those emails professionally. But in terms of the application, definitely you want to make sure that you're carving out time to fill that out. A lot of schools that you might be looking at are probably going to be on Common App, so a nice one-stop shop to fill out. But then you might also have schools that you're looking at that only have their own application. So giving those just as much attention and detail. When you're submitting them, try to submit them for the deadlines. I know some schools are rolling admissions, so you might be able to get away with submitting it after a deadline, but some schools are very hard and fast on their deadlines, and if you submit them later, you're not going to get a decision from them. So just keep that in mind. Know the schools that you're applying to and what their deadlines look like. Know if you're looking at a school for early action versus regular decision. Or early decision too, so early decision for schools, that is a binding contract. If you're admitted to that university, you're contractually saying that if you get accepted, you're going there. So just keep that in mind, whereas early action is showing interest in a school, submitting your application earlier, but you're not legally binded to that university, and then regular decision as well. So just again, keep in mind those deadlines, those different classifications, depending on what schools that you are looking at. If you are applying to schools that require test scores, and just sending those in as soon as possible. If you're selecting a school that's test optional, but you still want to send them, again, try to send them in a timely fashion, because most of the time what I see with students is that they sent in their high school transcript and I'm waiting on their test scores, and I can't do anything with their application until they send me their test scores. So a lot of the times that's the only thing holding an application up. So again, just keeping in mind, if you want to send in your test scores, just to send them in a timely fashion. And again, utilize the resources if you have questions about, something on the application, if you're having problems with your app, or if you want to find out the status, or if we received all your material, feel free to reach out to our office. That's what we're there for. Some people will stop in on a tour and check on the status as well, and that's perfectly fine. So just like I said, keeping on top of those deadlines, paying attention to each of those components of the application. And one thing I will say too is personal statements. For some schools, those are very important. They're going to look at that, and that could be the final determining factor between you and another application. So utilize the personal statement, your essay, to tell a story about yourself. I think a lot of admissions counselors probably hear similar stories in those those personal statements. So just try to show us who you are, because if I'm looking at an application, I'm just seeing numbers. I'm not really looking at the name. But if I read an essay, that name is going to stand out to me. It's going to paint a picture a little bit about who you are. So just keep in mind to kind of tell us a story about yourself and give us some context as to why you think that you might benefit from going to this particular university, or why you're interested. And like I said, it can make all the difference, especially for some schools that have those more competitive programs.
So you brought up, before you go, Tori, you brought up emails. Mm-hmm. What do you think when you get lovetoparty@hotmail.com or blazeking2020?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely lacks a sense of professionalism, and especially too, like I said, it is so common that I'll get those discreet, like it doesn't have their name in the email whatsoever, and then they just say with no greeting, do you have my SAT scores? It's hard for me because I don't have that student's name, that information. I can't just do a quick look for them. So I think professionalism is key. I think for those of you that maybe have your personal email, create another one. utilize either your first initial and last name or your full name in that email, and utilize that when you're applying to schools, because not only are you going to have all those communications in one place, it's going to be a professional email, and it's going to be helpful for admissions staff. Looking at that, they're going to know, okay, I know who the student is, I'm familiar with this name now. So just something to think about when you're applying for schools, maybe starting a new email account with that first initial last name or what have you.
And you all have a school email address that is appropriate, I would hope. So you can feel free, most of the seniors have used their school email address also. So this way they have the first initial, last name, and the school that they're emailing from. So feel free to do that, but you have to check your school email. I know there's a lot of you that still don't do that. You have to check your school email because you may miss something important coming from a college, not just from one of us. So Tori, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience with the application and the essay?
So I am not very formal. I do too many exclamation points. I put smiley faces everywhere, and I capitalize words when I'm excited. So I made it important to reach out to English teachers, go to guidance, and run through my applications with them to make sure that everything was just on the right track. I obviously, we haven't done anything like this before, so we don't know exactly what to do and what they're expecting from us. So it's important to use guidance and your English teachers and whoever's willing to help you, and just make sure that you're on the right track. Make sure that you're checking off all the right things and doing everything to the formality that they expect. So I know that one day at school, I spent 50 minutes with Mr. Goldman just running through my whole application to make sure everything was the way I wanted it. I was ready to set it in stone, put it aside, and be done with it, and know that it was exactly how they wanted it to be. So it's important to use those resources. And for the college essay too, they make it really clear that, obviously, like she said, there's a lot of people writing essays, and a lot of them are going to have similar stories. So it's important to get your voice and your personality across in the essay, but at the same time keep it formal. So it's important to have an English teacher who can help you find the balance between getting your personality in there, but making sure you also remember that it's going to a college and it needs to have that formality to it. So it's just, again, important to use those resources because you're not expected to know how to do everything, and they're going to help you figure things out for your first time doing stuff and help you make sure that colleges will be excited to see your applications and aren't left going, oh, they don't know what they're doing. So it's definitely important to utilize that.
Thanks. So the essay, as I said earlier, is not just a writing sample. It's an opportunity for you to express a little bit to the admissions counselors who you are. If you are, it's okay to show your personality in that. If you're a funny person, it's okay to put some humor into it. If you're not known for your humor, now is not the time to test that out. Okay? So it's important to kind of show them who you are also. Tori, could you talk about when you started this whole process and how you kind of mapped it all out for yourself?
So I think junior year for me was the perfect time to just start looking. That's when I started surveys and just looking up different colleges, I kind of had an idea of what major I wanted to do, so I kind of started diving into colleges with that major and just got an eye out for different opportunities at different places. And so I started just making a list on my phone and my notes. And it just was a bunch of different colleges that I thought could possibly be an option for me at some point. So I just started by making that list. It's simple, bare, just kind of a rough idea. And then from the summer to junior year and senior year is when I really started to dive into each one. I took a tour and I got to figure some stuff out about that college, whether I liked it, wrote some pros and cons down. And then obviously college boot camp is a great time to kind of start to get things flowing. And the way that everything's set up, the common application and everything online, once you start, it just starts to happen. It's set up in a way that it all just happens really smoothly, and the main part that you just need to do is get started in the first place. So it's great that we have resources like that to get you going. And I would say that this summer, just going into senior year, I finally just started to get rolling on everything. A bunch of my friends went to college boot camp. We're all just talking about it. We're all getting kind of more excited for what's to come in our next few years at our colleges. So it just kind of became more of an exciting opportunity, and we just started rolling with it. So junior year for me was just a time to get a look out and see what was around me, and then that list on my phone slowly shortened or got more specific, had some more details on it, and it just became a resource for me so I could look back on it and help me decide as I went along the way.
Thank you, Tori. So it's not too early to start. We are actually, I was at the South Shore Guidance Directors meeting a couple weeks ago, and several of the schools actually did their big kickoff for college planning about 2 weeks ago. We keep moving ours up. 4 years ago, we were doing it in March. The last 3 years, we've done it in February. Now we're finally in January, and hopefully next year we will be even earlier in January. But we're starting you really a year early, and it's not early. This is not a process you want to rush. You don't want to do sloppy work. You want to make sure that you are taking the time to make a very big decision, and you don't want an expensive decision. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. But if you can avoid that, it's always better. Utilize your resources here at school. Talk to the seniors that have gone through the process. Talk to the guidance counselors. If you can't get down to see us, send us an email. We'll schedule some time to meet with you. So there's plenty of time to do this, but just don't wait. There's a reason why we're starting you in January and not waiting until March or April to do this, or even worse. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to do. I told you I was going to show you how to access the work that you did freshman and sophomore year. If you click on the About Me tab and you click on My Assessments, you can see the Do What You Are, Learning Styles Inventory, the Strengths Explorer, and the Career Interest Profiler, and the Career Cluster Finder. These are all things that we had rolled out freshman and sophomore year with you folks. So if you have not done some of these or you haven't completed them, it's not too late to do that. But these are the things, I think Tori will agree, that will help kind of organize you and your thoughts. And you may not know what you want to major in, but you will know what you don't want to major in for sure when you do these. So it's kind of the backdoor approach, but it still gets you there, okay? So what we're going to do now is we are going to turn it over to the question and answer period. So please don't be bashful. I'm sure there's things we didn't cover that you have questions about. So if you have a question, just put your hand up and we will, in the back up there.
I have a question about test options. Your test options, are there extra requirements for the application for the student if they're choosing not to turn in test scores?
So the question is about test optional schools. Are there other things that you need to submit to the college if you choose a test optional school? And I'm going to turn that over to Shannon because Bridgewater is kind of a test optional school now.
Yep, we are test optional. So I think it depends on the school, so always good to have a conversation with that school about it. For Bridgewater specifically, there's no additional requirements. The only thing that's actually absolutely mandatory besides the application itself is the high school transcript. Everything else is optional, personal statements, letters of recommendation, and the test scores as well. But again, it can vary school to school, so definitely have that conversation and ask them about that and what they're looking for. Because some schools might ask instead of your test score, send a personal statement separate from one that you submitted in the application and a letter of recommendation or something like that.
And if you opt not to do test scores, are you weighted lower than someone who would turn in test scores, or is application looked at?
So if you opt not to turn in test scores, are you rated lower than somebody that does turn in test scores?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for this one, I'm going to speak specifically to Bridgewater. So typically with applications or in high school transcripts, GPA-wise, we're typically looking at a 3.0 or higher is what we consider good academic standing. So a 3.0 or higher with no test scores is going to get into the university. Below a 3.0 at that point with no test scores, it's going to go to the Dean of Admissions for special consideration because we have nothing else to base it off of. So he's going to take a look at the academic transcript. He might ask for letters of recommendation at that point if they haven't already been submitted to kind of make a decision upon that student. Does that make sense?
And as a guidance counselor, on occasion, we may get a call from a test optional school saying one of our students applied there, and they applied test optional, could they send their scores in? Okay, so if they feel like they need more information, they will either contact the student or the guidance counselor or both. At that point, it couldn't hurt to send them in at that point if they're asking for them, because clearly they're not sure at that point. Other questions?
Right there.
Down there?
You have one up here.
Right here. Okay, I'm going to move up. Thanks to Shrek, I have actually extra space. So I'm getting older. I can't hear as well anymore. I was going to do the presentation from up there, but the spotlight wasn't working. So what's your question? Okay. Okay, so she wasn't here freshman year, and she doesn't think she has a Naviance account. You do have a Naviance account. You just haven't accessed it yet. So come down to guidance, and we will give you your access code. Another question?
Steve, over here.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Best time to apply for scholarship. If you're a junior, is it too early to apply, or should you wait until you're a senior?
When is the best time to apply for scholarships? That is a very good question. I'm also the scholarship coordinator here. So I can tell you we are releasing the local scholarship book the week before February vacation, but that is for seniors. There is no scholarships in the book that are available to juniors. So that is usually, we usually release that week before February vacation for the seniors. And they usually have 5 to 6 weeks to submit their applications for those various scholarships. I get scholarships that are sent in that aren't part of the local scholarships. If juniors are eligible for them, I send them out via email to the students and the parents, and then you can just apply on your own. And if you need something from us, a transcript or something, you can just request that, and we will get that out also. Okay. Another question?
Right here in this sweatshirt.
Go ahead. Where are we? Do colleges take into consideration if you've done an internship? I'm going to turn that over to our admissions counselor.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I think it totally depends on the school and what they're looking at. So for Bridgewater, typically we're looking at the numbers. Your GPA and your high school transcript are the most important thing. And the reason being that we have, through the Board of Higher Education, our state standards that we're looking for, so we don't have a lot of flexibility with that. But if you're looking at a school with a, specific track, like if you've done a nursing internship or an education internship and those schools are specifically for, they have a great nursing or education program, then it might look good that you've had that internship experience, whether that be through the school or in your own time that you've done that. So again, a case-by-case basis depending on the school. So when you go to college fairs, it's always a good question to ask, if I have an internship, is that going to be weighed and considered when I'm applying?
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify something you said earlier in the evening about thanking notes. Is that after you visit the college, or is that after you've had an interview with the college?
That would be after you visited or spoke with somebody. If you visited the college and somebody took the time to give you a tour, or if you spoke with somebody, not just a quick question that you called for, but if they took some time with you to answer a whole bunch of questions, then I would just follow up with an email to them saying thank you for taking the time to speak with me or meet with me. All that stuff goes into the file, and again, it's just more information. If there's a few spots left and all the candidates are equal, that might be the little piece. That's the kind of person we want on our campus. Other questions? Yes.
More about Naviance, but so if a student wishes to pursue athletics at a college, and do you know if Naviance exports some of that student profile data into another application to build their sports profile?
So the question is, if it can Naviance export information into another profile if they're interested in playing a sport in college. No, Naviance, the colleges don't have the ability to see anything in Naviance. The only people that can see what's in Naviance are the student, the parent if they share with their parent, there's a box to click, and the guidance counselor. We use Naviance to send out transcripts and all the various forms that we need to send out to the colleges, but we have to click a button to be able to do that. Anything that needs to go, if you're looking at playing a Division I or Division II sport, you would need to declare yourself through the NCAA Eligibility Center. You don't need to do it for Division III, but that process needs to happen right away. You just go to the NCAA Eligibility Center, just Google it, it'll come right up. The student needs to set up their profile right there. It'll come back initially as a rejection because they have not satisfied their senior year yet. Don't worry about that. That's just part of the process. After they graduate, they'll put in the rest of it, and then they will. That stuff will all get processed as far as eligibility to participate in Division I or Division II sports. Go ahead. Do they care if you do anything athletic in high school? I'm going to have Shannon answer that question.
So are you asking if you're looking into doing athletics at the college level, if they care if you've done it in high school, or?
I think you wanted to know if they're looking in general to see what you've done other than your classes in high school?
Okay.
Extracurriculars.
Okay, yeah, I see. So specific to Bridgewater, we're not necessarily going to look at that. Again, we're going to look a lot at your numbers. So I wouldn't put too much, pressure on yourself. If you haven't maybe had the time to do extracurricular activities or have, jobs and things like that. We know that academics is the most important piece, and that's what we're looking at first and foremost. But when it comes to selective schools, maybe smaller schools or, schools that have competitive programs, they might be looking at that to see if you have, a well-rounded kind of background, both in academics as well as in sports or a job or different involvements, clubs and organizations that you've been in.
I also know that using the Common App, it gives you the perfect template to make sure that you don't miss anything that you're a part of. So if you're a part of some other clubs and everything but no athletics, you're gonna have plenty of opportunity to talk about that in your application and make it clear and all the other stuff that you've been involved in. So I know that you might be nervous that you don't get everything that you do across on your application, but the Common App sets it up really well to make sure that everything that you do doesn't get lost and that you get credit for everything that you've been a part of, and you can brag about a lot of different stuff that you've done that doesn't have to do with athletics. So I know it'll set you up perfectly for other things that you're involved with and obviously how you do in school.
And it also has the opportunity to check off things that you're interested in participating in college. If maybe you didn't have that experience in high school, you can check off, that you're interested in various different clubs and organizations as well.
Go ahead. Okay, so your son hasn't done anything any school-related activities, but he's been doing a lot of other activities outside of school. Okay, that form, that activity sheet is for us, for the guidance counselors. Okay, so there's two forms that we're going to ask them to complete by the time they are ready to apply to college. The activity sheet is one of them, and the reason we mentioned it tonight is because that's one they can start to fill in. they don't want to sit down senior year and say, what was it I did when I was a freshman? You know, so if they can start filling it out now and just adding to it as time goes on, that will just make their lives easier later on. The second form is the guidance counselor letter of recommendation information sheet, which will also ask similar questions, but more additional things like their proudest accomplishments and other types of things like that. We use that to supplement what we know about the students when we write our letters of recommendation. The activity sheet is also part of the scholarship application. It's the back page of the scholarship application, so they will need to use that because the scholarship committees that are around here in town want to know what the students were involved with, whether it was in school or out of school. So it's not necessarily about what they did in school. Are they a well-rounded person? Are they involved in activities? You know, they go to school and then go home and sit on the couch all the time. So it's just a question of just, you know, getting out there. And that's why we put that into two columns on that page. The left-hand side was all school-related activities, all of our clubs and sports. The right side are the outside activities that we could think of, and there's probably others that are out there that we didn't list there. And Boy Scouts is on there. That's just a suggestion, because a lot of times people are like, oh, what's important, what's not important? Well, these are things worth saying. If you've done it, it's important. Okay?
Going off of that, your college essay is actually a perfect opportunity kind of for him to talk about some of the stuff that he's been passionate about and been a part of, and to show that, like, although it isn't a part of technically like the school community, it's had a huge impact on his life and it's taught him a lot and stuff like that, and that can really show the college the passion behind him, but also the things that he's learned through that and everything. So the college essay is probably a huge important part for him to be able to brag about the stuff that he's done and show that it still had a great impact on him as a person and shows that he's still an asset to a lot of colleges.
You know, not all of us are athletes. My daughter, she's only 9, but the only thing she does is dance. She doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to play sports. She doesn't want to do anything else, but she dances like it's no one's business 3 nights a week. And that's fine. I had a student several years ago. He played football for a period of time and then he quit. And the only activity that he had consistently on his activity sheet was work. And there was a really good reason for that. His family did not have a lot of money. Dad was disabled. Mom had a job, but she wasn't making much money. He was working every single day after school at CVS since he was old enough to work. And the money he was making went into the family pot. It wasn't his money, it was the family's. That was his choice. That was his decision to do that. But in his time at CVS, he started as a cashier, worked his way up to shift manager. By the time he graduated from high school, he was counting up the money in the registers and locking up the pharmacy. So that also showed a lot of responsibility and maturity on his part, too.
Yeah, I have a lot of involvement within the school community, but I chose to write my college essay on work as well. So I didn't even want to focus on the stuff that I didn't hear because I didn't think that was necessarily what best showed who I was as a person. So I chose to focus more on my work ethic and what I did outside of school.
And Tori is very involved here at school, too. Other questions? Yes?
Because our GPAs aren't weighted here, right? Are they not?
Correct, they're not weighted.
So that all goes into the formula
Yes.
for school. And what about class rank? Is that something that?
Okay, so the question was, well, it wasn't a question, it was a statement, and it's a correct statement. Our grade point averages here are not weighted, they are unweighted, so we're on a 4.0 scale. So an A is an A is an A. It doesn't matter if it's college prep honors or advanced placement. The rank is weighted, and we do that because we don't want to have any ties, because we would have several ties for number 1 in the class if we didn't do that. There are a lot of schools that do weighted ranks and GPAs. There's a lot of schools that have eliminated ranks because they don't want to put that competition in play. And what's a rank at this school versus another school? If you are, if you're 100 in this class here, and the class is 170 students, and you're at another school where you're 100 and the class is 360 students, what does that mean? What happens with the GPA is all the colleges recalculate the GPA using their own scale and counting the classes they want to count. So the first school that I worked at had college preparatory phys ed. You going to count that, Shannon? No, okay. We had honors band. Well, we have honors band here also. Most likely, unless you're going to Berkeley College of Music, you're not going to get, you may not even get college prep credit for that. You might get credit as an activity. The colleges have a way of trying to level the playing field. There's some colleges, not a lot, that will say, we're looking at English, math, social studies, science, language. We know every high school offers that. And it's nice that you took civics and government, but not every school offers that. Or you took a marketing class, not every school offers that. I think the colleges in general are pretty fair about that. I think that they will look at usually most of the academic-based courses, and if they were honors, they'll give you more credit. They'll weight it heavier, or AP, they'll weight it a little bit heavier. I know UMass Amherst, when I was out there for a visit, said, let's say you took a sociology class and you got an A in it, and you took a psych class and you got a B plus. You know, they're going to round that off. They're going to average those two scores together, call it a social science class. Oh, and it was honors, we'll give you an extra half a point for that also. And most colleges, I think, try to be fair like that. I don't know if you want to talk about what you do at Bridgewater as far as...
Yeah, so we recalculate, we do weight the scores, so if you see an honors, you're going to get a half a point more. If you're taking an AP course and you're concerned because you got a C, that counts as a B when we're doing the recalculation. So you get a full point for AP courses or dual enrollment. So definitely we are recalculating that to our own standards. At the end of the day, too, have had conversations with students who are surprised that, you know, some of the classes they may have taken, like, you know, wood shop or computer-aided design specific to something, if we don't offer it, we're not able to accept it. Or, you know, even with, like, some schools offer education courses for those that are looking to go into teaching, and we probably aren't going to accept an education course because it's not offered through us. We don't know what that curriculum looks like or what it entails. So at the end of the day, it's up to the school whether or not they accept that credit and that class towards your GPA. For liberal arts, you know, I'll accept music classes and we accept you know, art classes and things like that, because those are the types of classes that we would offer on campus. So just something to keep in mind that just because you took it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to factor in towards your GPA. And again, it's ultimately the school's decision whether or not they're going to take that credit.
Other questions? I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Bless you.
I'm sorry.
Letters of recommendation.
Oh, asking about letters of recommendation. We're going to cover that in the next workshop, but I will tell you, before they leave for the summer, they should get a commitment from a teacher, and all they have to say is, would you be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me? It's usually a teacher that they've had as a junior because they've seen them most recently for the longest period of time. You don't want to go and wait till your senior year and ask a brand new teacher that you've never had to write a letter and they've only had you for a couple months. You want to avoid asking a teacher that you had as a freshman and you've never had them again. That's kind of a little ways back. And now if you had them as a freshman and you had them again as a junior or a senior, they could certainly talk about the growth they've seen in you as a student. But the general rule of thumb is before they leave, all they need to do is just get the commitment. They don't need to do anything unless the teacher asks them for something, but just get the commitment, because the junior teachers tend to be the ones that are inundated with the requests. And it's above and beyond their jobs. They're doing it on their own time, and they don't want to write. They don't want to write something that's not capturing the student because they feel rushed and they have to get it out. It's important to make sure you get that commitment before somebody beats you out for that. We do require that they give the teacher and the guidance counselors a minimum of 15 school days, so not vacation periods or anything like that, notice to submit anything, whether it's a letter or transcript or anything like that. It takes time to process all these things. But if you get that commitment now, that's one less thing you have to worry about later. Yes? Can you ask more than one? You can. Most colleges only want one academic letter, and they'll take one from a guidance counselor as the all-round letter of recommendation. You know, what you've done in school, what you do for extracurriculars, whether it's in school or out of school. More is not better. So you don't need to get a whole bunch. Bridgewater, actually, do you even ask for letters anymore?
We don't ask.
Okay, so Bridgewater doesn't even ask for letters anymore. Framingham State does not ask for letters anymore. So if you're looking at the numbers, you know, you get that 3.0, and you're a solid candidate for that school. They're probably not going to look any further than that, right? Any other questions? Good questions tonight. Yes. If it's okay, so I'm going to have Shannon answer that question.
Yeah, and so again, another situation where you're going to want to chat with schools about specific programs to see if they are competitive or not. For example, at Bridgewater, for the most part, we're admitting to the university as a whole. We have one competitive program, and it's our aviation program, so we're only admitting maybe 45 to 50 students a year. So with that, we're encouraging students to apply early action, and we're looking for that 3.0 GPA or higher for admissibility. And really, that's the only competitive program. Other than that, we can admit as many psychology, education, criminal justice majors as may apply. So just, again, another good conversation to have. If you're looking at a particular program, to ask the school, is it competitive? If so, what are you looking for qualifications, for admission standards, and when should they apply? Is earlier better in that scenario?
If anybody here is thinking about nursing, you always apply early. Always apply early. Nursing is a very, very competitive field. There are not enough nursing programs out there to satisfy all the people that want to get into a nursing program. As I mentioned earlier, UMass Amherst takes 90 students a year. You cannot transfer in as a sophomore or junior. You have to be a direct admit. But most of the nursing programs have limited amount of space. So that is a program that you want to make sure you're getting your stuff in right away. Other questions? Yes. Does Naviance have a section for studying abroad? You know, that's a good question. I'm not sure if it does or not. That would be under special programs when you do the search. If it was anywhere, I'm not sure. You know, I've never seen it, but it doesn't mean that it's not in there. Yeah, you would find that on any school website. Absolutely. And most schools, I would say, have a study abroad program. Yeah. You know, it might be where you want to go. That might vary. And there's some schools that actually knock off part of the tuition bill for studying abroad too, because they want you to go to someplace else. So there's some great opportunities for anybody that might want to take advantage of it. Any other questions? Okay, we'll be here for a few more minutes. Just before you leave, that gold piece of paper with the evaluation, if you could just take a minute to fill it out. If you need something to write with, Alexa, our intern, is in the back, and she has a whole bunch of pencils. Just put your hand up if you need something to write with. We just ask that you drop the pencils and the evaluation forms in one of the 2 boxes by the door as you exit. Quickly, I just want to thank Shannon Fernando Cole for coming in again. She always does a great job. Tori, you were awesome tonight. Thank you so much for coming in and doing this. Sean Siciliano for setting us up with the audio visuals. The MHS custodial staff also for all the setup and cleanup that they're going to do. And most importantly, thank you for coming out tonight. This wouldn't be anything if you didn't show up, but we hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, we'll be up here. Just please come up to the stage. And thanks again for coming out, and have a good night.